I'd like to call this regular meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. I'd like to also announce that this meeting is being recorded. Everyone is in attendance, all 7 of us.
Yay.
Perfect. I'll now start the land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders past, present, and future who call this place Anasquoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. Do any members of the board wish to pull any items? Do I have a motion on that consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Director Topliff, seconded by Director Brandt. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say yes or aye.
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 Yes. All those opposed, say no. No no's, no abstentions. Everyone's present. Motion passes. Now I'd like to move on to the public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board of directors that are not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided by law. Do any members of the public wish to speak? Yes.
All right, thank you. Somebody can maybe tell me when I've got 30 seconds. Recent weather has me under the weather. I only have some one sentence notes. To clarify, several years ago, somebody did say that they and them, that they and someone else ran the community services district and that they were to train community service officers. And I'm not sure that I've said before that it could have been Spencer, but that may not be accurate. John is one in the office most. And the 2 o'clock meeting that we had yesterday, it's like I had to ask a direct question 3 times in order to get an answer. I don't know if I'll spend my time on that. Upon arrival in IV this time, a few days ago, everyone on Del Playa had dark hair, mostly a lot of Hispanics. Previous to COVID, Del Playa was completely bare on Saturday. And it was all guys, like maybe like 1 female. When I say all guys, like 30, 40, 50 people, females were not seen at their house, on the ledge. And this is part of some of the funny business that I'm having to deal with. People were posting up when I was in Solvang, some Mexicans in front of, twice in front of the place where I was having some discussions trying to resolve this. Something else that happened starting in Solvang in July and going until Santa Barbara in February was a black male and white female couple. I didn't see any black couples during that whole time. I recently gave some notes to the Commission for Women. I spoke at the supervisors and City Hall for Santa Barbara. And supervisors, I stated that, maybe like an American Idol kind of a thing. And I gave them some notes on Friday. And on Wednesday, there was a female president nominee from South Carolina. And I just think that that's beyond coincidence that it's related. And I was interested in finding the path how that happened, because I had this problem with the music industry where, I look like a delusional megalomaniac when I start talking about what's going on. And it's part of the problems that I'm having where I have all this unusual activity around me. So I also have a conditional vice presidential candidacy. I'll only run under a female. If she is killed or resigns or we go to war, I will also resign. I gave some ideas to different people and randomized. John didn't get them, related to things like maybe having a few different stages with themes like a surf theme and other things. You guys clearly aren't going to be doing that this year. Maybe it's something that the associated students could be doing this year if they wanted to. I think there's still time in order to put on something big. Another one was some notes on the 12-foot sidewalk in 4 years, where we could maybe have yellow sponsor bricks along the curbside with some blue. That would, you have a like yellow brick road, you have UCSB color, you have the sun and water, and then maybe different kinds of things for the colored concrete or creative endeavors, tiling or whatever, I don't really know. A desalinization with UCSB, maybe a small or medium one that could service Islista and UCSB, or maybe just some portable ones like for a truck, or just something else, a contest for the engineering students to design something for here. And I also spoke at the planning commissions and also to the board of supervisors that maybe there could be a few different desalination plants staged throughout the state where they could use pumping stations to get water in like a Central Arizona project, kind of just a ditch, to get water to all the lakes and streams. And within about a year maybe of that happening, the lakes and rivers will be up and we will be dealing with some of the dry conditions that we have. I think that's it.
All right, thank you for those public comments. Do any other members of the public wish to speak? Yes.
I just wanted to inform the board that I gave Jenna Norton, Mighty Beautiful, my report on the abandoned bicycles. It was a very interesting set of findings. It's not a question of the number of bicycles that were found. It's a question of the concentration of the abandonment. And the report showed that the majority of the bikes are over in Pardal and some over here on Embarcadero Road, along by where the 7-Eleven is. So there was a total of something like 97 bikes counted. 50% of those were definitely abandoned. They were in various stages of dismemberment, or disembowelment, however you want to call it. And but there are also some that were there that are questionable. So the number might actually be more like 60-75%. So I guess March 21st is supposed to, when the county is supposed to come out and do that. I tagged the bicycles that I deemed unusable or unoperational. I tagged them, so there's a little bit of a premise to go off of. And yeah, it was a very interesting set of statistics. And I even, in honor of Jay, I even did a thermal map, but I hand drew it using magic markers. So it was, he likes thermal maps, I like them too. And so anyway, that's it. If Jenna has a report, if any of you all have a chance to take a look at it, I think you'd enjoy it. It's very truthful, very straightforward, and very honest. That's it.
All right, thank you for those comments. Do any other members of the public wish to speak? Are there any members on Zoom? No one on Zoom. All right, seeing none, let's close the public comment period and let's move on to our discussion action items. Item 4.1, resolution 23-2, honoring the service of Shirley Moore.
Great. So yeah, this is Shirley. She's been our yeah. So Shirley's last official day, she might say I'm a little bit too advised, but her last day working is Friday, and so she's been on since the end of April last year, and really came in at a moment where we really needed a lot of help as a district, and had, we didn't have a lot of options to get help. So Shirley stepped into the role and helped me out. I mean, I couldn't have done it last year, getting through with our finances, getting through with our retirement system. I don't know how many hours we spent on that. So we got a lot done, just having Shirley here for 10 months. And I'm gonna read the resolution, and then Shirley, if you want to say anything, I'll turn it over to you. But let me just read this, and Sibel and Carrie helped get this written for us. So resolution 23-2, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Isla Vista Community Services District honoring the service of Shirley Moore, IVCSD Interim Executive Assistant. Whereas Shirley Moore has served the Isla Vista Community Services District as Interim Executive Assistant since April 2022, and whereas Shirley lived in Isla Vista while attending UC Santa Barbara and following her graduation, forging an affinity for Isla Vista culture and values, whereas Shirley had a successful career in both the private and public sectors, including working for the County of Santa Barbara as the business manager for the Department of Child Support, from which she recently retired. Whereas Shirley took on the role of interim executive assistant for IVCSD at a time of great need for the district while ostensibly enjoying retirement. Whereas Shirley undertook and completed several important projects for the IVCSD, including setting up the retirement plan for all employees, designing new onboarding and timesheet processes, organizing several years of records, establishing new financial protocols, and managing the district's accounts payable and receivable, implementing the first district credit card and its policy handbook, establishing protocols for quicker employee reimbursements, and more. Whereas Shirley has been an essential part of the IVCSD team, supporting other staff in their events and programs, such as supporting community outreach during the October 2022 Pardal Sustainable Transportation pop-up. And whereas Shirley committed to stay on staff for an additional month in order to train her successor, Sibel Goksu, IVCSD management assistant, in the various aspects of the district's internal operations she had responsibility for, ensuring minimal loss for the institutional knowledge of the IVCSD. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the Isla Vista Community Services District honors and commends Shirley Moore for 10 months of distinguished service to the Isla Vista Community Services District and wishes her an enjoyable second retirement.
I did all that.
Yeah.
10 months?
Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Carrie. First, I guess I want to thank Carrie
Yeah.
first, because Carrie thought of me and sent me a text asking me if I wanted to work for the IVCSD for allegedly 3 months.
So it always
And I said, oh, I could do anything for 3 months. So 10 months later, here I am. But no, I'm very glad that I took the job. I was kind of hesitant at first. I wasn't sure if I wanted to come out of retirement, but I'm glad that I did. And even though
It
she
makes
said,
you 18 again, right? Being an island.
I know. Well, you know, the thing is, I lived in IV when I was a student, and then I lived in IV later. And to see the changes in IV, I think is just amazing. I mean, to see how the culture has changed and to see what the IVCSD has done in the 5 years that you've been a district is just so great. You know, it just was so amazing to see the change and to see what you all have done. With you and your people, you have a great team. You know, all the people that work for you are so dedicated and so committed. And I felt very proud to be a part of that these past 10 months. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you and for you, and to say that you believed in me from the beginning, and I really valued that. You know, that from day one when I walked in and we started working together, I sensed that you really believed in me and you trusted me, and you just let me do my job, and you listened to me, listened to my ideas, and you showed me a lot of appreciation. And so it's just great working with you and working with your team. And so thank you. You know, I really had a good time.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shirley. You really saved me. Recently, I'll say that. But I'm the district.
Got you out of your hole.
Yeah, got me out of the hole.
Okay. Well, you can leave now. You
I-
don't
Yeah,
have to stay.
Do I get my
I guess so.
resolution?
Yeah.
Where's my resolution?
I just want to briefly comment that I'm extremely grateful that you took on this assignment, and anyone that Jonathan speaks so highly of, we know is an excellent worker and excellent asset to our team. So I'm sure that all of us are extremely grateful. I'd like to see if there's a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Motion in second. Okay. All directors who, okay, I'd like to have a vote on this matter. So all directors who approve this resolution. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Is there any public comment on this motion to approve resolution 23-2? All right, see no public comment. I'd like to, yes.
Can I just say something? I just want to say a big thank you for your service. So many of the things on this list are things that we have had on our list since day one, like the bare bones things that an agency needs to be able to function, and to see how much of it was accomplished in such a short amount of time is really, it blows my mind. And I think we as a district we should be very thankful to you, and we are in debt to you for being able to come at this time of great need and help. And
Thank
so
you.
I just really want to say thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I feel proud. I feel like, like with Jonathan, that we accomplished a lot. And so that makes me happy and proud that I was a part of it.
Do any other board members have comments they'd like to make? All right, so let's go to a vote for this motion. So all board members who approve this motion, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All opposed? 0. All absent? 0. All abstained? 0.
Sydney had her hand up too.
Oh,
Let me switch the theme mode here. Yeah.
yes.
Sorry.
Sydney, please go.
I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to thank Shirley for all of her service and support for our entire team. It's been absolutely incredible to work with you. And I just wish you all the best in your retirement. So thank you.
Thank you, Sydney.
All right, so this motion passes 7-0-0-0. Again, thank you very much.
If you
Let's
don't
take a
have,
picture.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna get it. I don't have it
because
with
it might
me.
be nice to have a picture now, maybe with something that's not real.
Yeah.
You can use Spencer's certificate of election.
I've got one. Yeah.
Maybe Photoshop later.
Picture. I've got it in the office. Do you
And
want to
then you
break
get,
for a
then you'll
picture?
get a nice
Yeah,
picture.
yeah, yeah. I'll go grab
Yes.
a frame.
That's a good picture. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
for
take a
sure.
picture, yeah. So should we get ready? Thank you. Should we stand up and
Oh,
stand
can
forever?
all do that?
Sure. Ready for an elected body.
Yeah, we're all here. We're all-
Yeah. Big deal. I know, exactly. I know.
What's up? Long time no see. I know.
I like to see you.
I thought it was raining.
It is raining.
I saw you coming in.
I think I took the last.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
Second to last. Somebody
Um,
came after
Don't
me.
worry. Okay, we're ready for our close-up.
Okay,
You can hold this.
okay.
You can hold it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the other way.
Don't get too close. Who's, yeah,
Oh.
Who's taking the picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
You can.
Yeah.
I gotta go with this profile like this.
Yeah, I'll get in the picture. All right.
I'm a terrible photographer, so, bear with me. Okay, everybody say, what's up?
What's up?
There we go. Let me get another one. There we go. Look at it,
Thank
let me know what you think.
Lovely to meet you much.
Looks great.
Looks
Okay.
great. Thank you.
I'll grab this. Yeah, please do.
Started with us.
Oh, he works for the building. That's not a, I mean, you can. Okay, got it. Excuse me, got
All right.
Hang on.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in that, helping us honor excellent executive assistant. I'd like to move on to item 4.2, the 2023 Spring Festival budget and contracts.
Excellent. So I have a proposal to go over, and then yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you to our ad hoc committee, Director Craig and Charles and Topliff, who worked on us, worked with staff on this, worked with staff on this, and to Sydney and Maya and Jenna, who also were involved in getting this together. So we're following up last meeting. We gave a lot of background last meeting, and what we did in the last 2 weeks is try to put more details, numbers, and figures together on this. So I think we've got a pretty solid concept now for what we're going to be doing. Essentially, it's an event where we're gonna be in Little Acorn Park, the community center area. Perfect Park would be the main center of the event, Little Acorn being the main one. We're gonna be distributing free food from local businesses, water distribution, have public art for taking pictures, have some local bands at a small stage in the park for music, have the CSO safety tent out, availability of public restrooms and chairs and tables for people to sit and eat their food and take a small break. That's the main kind of focal point. And then also looking towards other Isla Vista parks, such as Sea Lookout, Wind into the Sea, Camino Pescadero, Walter Caps, Trigo Pasado, or Camino del Sur to have additional public restrooms available on Del Playa. And I've talked to IVRPD about us renting those parks and things positive there. We just have to, if this is approved, I'll just have to sign the paperwork and go through the application. For the budget breakdown, so we had in our approved budget 110,000 for community festivals. We spent 15,000 for the Halloween events, the grant program, and the event we held. So there's $95,000 left. We had planned to fund that with 55,000 from UCSB, 10,000 in sponsorships, which isn't, going to happen at this point, and 30,000 from the utility users tax. We also had money in other budgets. The community center budget has a spring major event for 4,000, and then physical media for this we had pre-budgeted at least 2,000, but it will probably cost more. The way the budget breaks down is it's a $70,000 budget. It might, it's not exact. It might have to go a little higher. We'll have to come back possibly for a little extra, or it might be lower. The biggest expense is, well, the logistical planning and having an event management company who's going to run the day of the event and take responsibility for logistics. That's the biggest expense at $25,000. And the reason it's higher than the last year's budget is because we're starting later. And so it's just the paying for crunch time, essentially. The highest expense in terms of the programmatic aspect is the food. So we went big on food. It's what we discussed in the committee. So $15,000. Water, $2,000 is what we spent to distribute about, I think, 4,000 bottles in 2021. So we're looking at that, but it might be different for water. We're still needing to find a vendor. Water bottles are like promotional water bottles that we would have, like branded IVCSD water bottles to give out to people, like the pouch ones. They can hold them with them and then have an IVCSD thing with them. EMT, that would not be a cost at this point. The idea is to get fire to do it. If they end up not being able to do it, it might become a cost, which is around $2,000 was what it was last time. Entertainment and bands, or a game. So we're gonna have Ivy local bands get paid a small stipend, about $250 to play a set. Also having funds available to rent something like a dunk tank or some sort of game that people can play that you can rent, like the Big Jenga or something. The mural would cost $2,200 to commission to get it painted and installed. Bathrooms and trash, it's maybe a more complex piece of the budget, but we're putting in $8,000. It's more of a range. It might go as low as $5,000. It might go as high as $8,000, but that's for having 30 restrooms serviced twice. So that's essentially 18,000 uses of the restrooms because you're cleaning them twice during the day. And then trash at our events, so we can throw away their trash. Janitorial is just another cost, like the event cleanup is going to be something. The door hanger for $6,000, that's the realistic cost of what that is to distribute. Park rental was $2,500 last year. I'm just assuming it's going to be similar, but it might be different. And then finally, table and chairs rental, again, projected based off of last year's cost. Finally, one thing our committee discussed is possibly hiring event staff, like people to help IVCSD do some of our activities, like interns who can do outreach for the event, who can just be a part of this. So but also the event company will be hiring some day of people to do food distribution and things like that, because what we're hearing is most of the vendors for food can't do it themselves, like the IV local businesses. So we need someone with a food license to pass them out. That's the budget. It adds up to 70,000. So it is a smaller budget than last year, but maybe a little bigger than what we had discussed 2 weeks ago. But I think this is all encapsulating. It's probably every cost we're going to have here. Just some of these might go up or down a little bit. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions, or if our committee wants to make any comments on this. I just want to also thank the CBF Productions who we worked with last year. They turned around, I called them the day after the board meeting and said, hey, we need event management help. What can you do? And so they got back to us really fast and being able to, work with us. So.
Freeman.
Is this the same contract that we used last time, or are there?
I made a copy of it and changed some dates. Cool. We actually have to make a fix on the date. I put the wrong date, but that's just, it's the same one as last year. Yeah.
Dr. Deshler.
Can you tell me the day and time of the event?
Oh, yeah, I think I missed that somewhere in here. It's on April 8th. The focus is 1 to 7, but one food vendor might want to start earlier, but we're looking at 1 to 7.
Rex Manning Day.
What's that?
Saturday?
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
Rex Manning Day
I don't know.
Rex Fanning?
from Eiffel Records. What is that? What's the?
Okay, you think about that and I'm gonna ask more questions. Are we gonna do any type of flyer, with Halloween? There was, flyer that went out to residents, kind of do's and don'ts, resources, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Is that part of this budget?
It is. It's
Okay.
the 6,000 for the door hanger. That's become like our tradition at this point for a few years now. So we'll keep it up. And Sydney's gonna be working on that.
Okay, and then, I wanted to ask if it would be possible for the board members and others who are associated with IVCSD to have like a hat or a t-shirt that identifies that with IVCSD. And then also I wanted to ask if there will be places to have water on DP.
Yes. So some of the DP parks is where we plan to distribute water.
Okay, so
Um,
water in the restroom.
Yes.
Okay.
Water, and the good thing is that IVRPD installed water distribution stations at those parks permanently. So Camino Pescadero and Sea Lookout have spouts. So we just have to stand next to the spout and give people a refillable water bottle at those points. So it's really great.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
yes, in terms of shirts, it might be an additional budget expense, but it might not be something, like it might not rise to the amount the board needs to approve. So we'll look into getting those ordered quickly, just like an event staff shirt.
Yeah, I think it would be nice because when Carrie and I were out there last year, we got lots of questions about who we are,
Yeah.
who we were.
Good.
And it would be nice to just be like, this is who we are.
Yeah, okay. We'll work
We were
on
asked, whose mom are you?
it. Name tags and placards are on our list too in
Yes.
general, so those could just go hand in hand, like try to get it for Deltopia too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Dr. Brandt.
Well, I just wanted to say, I'd love to hear from the committee. I know you've all gotten to dive deep into putting this together, and would love to hear just any thoughts or feedback that you all have from putting it together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest, like the one change that we had from when we met was the event planning fee. But I completely agree with Jonathan, and that's something that needs to be an expense. Otherwise, this isn't realistically going to happen. But yeah, when we met, we were all pretty much on the same page as far as like our big concerns were getting water and bathrooms on DP. Sounds like that's going well.
I think we're feeling like we're having some good cooperation from the park districts, even though they didn't want to co-sponsor or actually put on an event with us. They've been very open to our using the parks, and I think they're very favorably inclined to what we're doing. So that has felt like a good thing. And then another thing that we talked about was having Delphi be no parking for that day. And we've reached out to Public Works a little bit. There's a letter that you'll see later on the agenda. But it seems like in order to have better sight lines and to have the locations for the porta potties and the water and so forth, it would be really helpful to have less congestion of
car parks on the street. So that was one of the things that we thought would help make it a safer event.
Yeah, we also discussed the property damage alongside with the cars, and we also discussed the social media, something with the mural, like a picture contest of some sort.
That's right. Cool. Well, that's all great to hear. I mean, I think this is really well put together, and it sounds very much in line with what we did last year, maybe a little bit scaled back, but I think that's good. I think that's the direction that we're looking at going. And really glad to hear about the interest and cooperation, coordination with the park district. That's great. And I love the idea of the bathrooms. Jonathan, can you tell me, so how are they, there's 30 of them, how are they divvied up? They're like half on DP? And
We
like-
don't have a site map. yet.
Don't have a site map, okay. But the idea is that some will be on DP.
Yes.
And then some will be, okay. Yeah, because I saw that number, I was like, that's a lot of bathrooms, but
And it's
that
not as
makes
many as you
sense.
think. Marburg recommended we have, based on like their number of one bathroom per 50 people, they said you should realistically have like 150 restrooms for this many people. But with us having 30 and getting them serviced 3 times, that's like having 90.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think from having attended Deltopia on a number of occasions, that these bathrooms are going to be very popular, and that they offer a great sort of entry point for other services, whether it's the water, whether it's the safety stations, to be around them, just as a way of, because there will be a lot of people, I imagine, that are drawn to them. So.
Director Freeman.
So likely a surprise to nobody, I will be voting no on the proposal as set up. I would be very excited by, per the discussion last time, where it said last time, if it were just the bathrooms and the water, I do agree that this is a very important thing for us to be doing, but particularly with the large event management fee tacked on to the construction of the actual party part of this, I don't think that it's responsible use of our funds at this time. A few issues with that I have, one of which is that I continue to believe, as I have for years now, that this is not something that our district has either the jurisdiction, or even if we claim we have the jurisdiction, shouldn't be taking the political charge to be doing, because we are overlapped with the Parks and Recreation District. And if we believe that the Parks and Recreation District is not doing their job, we believe that they should be running events and they aren't, maybe we should be running for that district instead of for this district, or attending their public comment and speaking very harshly, trying to do something in order to push them in that direction. Then I feel that this event last time did not actually cause much diversion, which seemed to be one of its biggest goals, per the maximum attendance that was actually the max utilization attendance of the event, and the exit interviews that I did with police in the area after the event. But I also have an issue with this time, which is that we have a lot of programs right now that are in serious flux, and particularly that might end up having extended costs. We're receiving emails about the possibility of our safety station costs going up dramatically. We are still needing to figure out something to do about our sexual assault and domestic violence investigator position. It's something that I feel very strongly that we should have. And these are things that we might end up regretting having spent $70,000 on something that potentially, like last year, will only cause 150 people max diversion off of Del Playa. So I do not believe that this is a reasonable thing for us to be doing at this time. And I also think that the idea that, well, it's okay to spend more because we're getting into it later isn't also a responsible form of government. But that's my reasoning, and I don't mind. It's personally at all. So no, 6-1.
Thank you for those comments and questions. I wanted to ask a few more small, but I hope are small, clarifying questions. So I wanted to, you mentioned the servicing of the restrooms. Can you tell me what time or how that will look like when we think about the vehicles entering certain areas?
we don't have those details.
Okay. And then I'm curious about just how many water bottles we hopefully will get based on the $500 cost, or
I think the 500 was for a significant amount.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they're pretty
Okay.
cheap. Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'm glad to see that we have something trying to minimize our non-permanent footprint, or something to have a more sustainable footprint, I should say, regarding hydration. All right, do any other members of the board have questions before we go to public comment? All right, I'd like to open up this item for public comment. Yes.
Thank you. So these are some notes that I made that didn't make it here in time, and I don't think that you guys still have them. And because I can't use the internet, and my song online, it has 2 laws. It's supposed to have 3, so it's manipulated. So when I say I can't use the internet, it's just, so I'll just get into it. Various theme stages, like a surf at the old jail, world, global fusion, rock, indie, techno, others. A minimal fee for a high quality audio. Incremental package pricing for 2+ audio. Video feed of high quality purchase, deluxe audio package with or without video. An entry video feed, a beach ball cam, multi-drones for streaming, DVD, and CSO monitoring. Premium package for everything, 1 in 20 free DVD, helps to promote the DVD also. Special footage and package pricing for student edition DVD. So I also have a concern, so maybe I don't know if I can get a picture and it can get to the Associated Students, but I just have a concern that for an entire generation, I mean, we went from a society where they didn't lock their doors to some of the crime and other things that are going on in the news. And it's just, instead of just binge drinking, and I can appreciate partying really wildly, instead of just binge drinking, that there could be some cultural activity, you know, and there are people that, you know, just really aren't interested in just completely being drunk for, you know, spring break or whatever this is. So hopefully, I don't know why the students haven't done it. I know where I'm from, the students had a spring fling on their campus, and that was like in like the early 90s. So, so just that.
Thank you for those comments. Any other members of the public? Yes.
You know, and thinking with Director Freeman was saying, you know, the reality is utopia. I hate using that word, but that event is going to happen. With that said, whether it's a sanctioned event or not, so as a community, where do we fall in? Do we promote a party, or do we concern ourselves with public safety? And there's this weird gray area. You know, if you get people, if you divert people from what I call the impact zone, you know, there is an effect on public safety. But I think that one of the biggest things is having the water stations and the restrooms, and having the cars off of Del Playa is a very good idea for a number. Like you said, line of sight is one of the things. Also, the damage that happens to cars, even just on a regular Friday or Saturday morning on Del Playa in Sabo. Everybody's just like, oh, don't you get your, you know, we live on Segovia, people, don't you get your mirrors messed with? Like, no, it doesn't happen here. It only happens in Sabo, Del Playa. But, you know, like I said, the event will happen, sanctioned or unsanctioned. The concern about public safety should be primary, and it is. You know, the fact that you're getting water in restrooms, and cars being moved off Del Playa. It also makes it easier for EMTs if they have to get to the scene and get here. But you know, with that said, I think that you know, some sort of side event might not be a bad idea. It's kind of like, well, you have to try it and see. It's an experiment. There's only one way to find out. How big of a side event, that's another story. You know, I'm not an event planner. I wouldn't know how much money it takes to do something unless I'm told. You know, and I've been kind of told by Jonathan, director of booth, I'm manager of booth, and sorry, I called him director, but I think it's a good idea to be engaged with the public on this. I think it's a great idea to promote the public safety aspect of it, get the water to people in the restrooms. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, is there going to be need for more law enforcement? I don't know. I don't think there is. I think that event is kind of waning a little bit. I think that the locals are starting to take their community back. And that's something that we hope. That's one of the things about the public safety aspect that will get the locals to take the community back on that particular weekend. So it's, you know, I'm not making much sense here, but I think that I have to say that the basic essentials of the basic needs are being met, and I commend board of directors and staff for that. And let's try to make it a safe one. Let's try to keep it safe, keep it reasonable, and keep it local if we can, but the best as we can. And as far as being the older people roaming around, yeah, Kim and I go to parties and first concern is, hey, whose parents are these? No, we have 5 cats, no kids. So, it's, I understand that. I understand that plight, but doesn't mean that you're not welcome. So, yeah, we'll have to see what happens. It's a wait and see kind of thing. And best we can do is learn from it going forward. So that's my take.
All right, thank you for those comments. Are there any other public comments, anything on Zoom?
Nothing on Zoom.
All right, I'll bring this item back to the board. Are there any comments or discussion the board would like to have on this agenda item?
I just like
Dr.
to comment on the budget a little bit. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces with this, and we have a lot of outside entities that we're working with. And so as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that we haven't really nailed down financially yet. And I'm just wondering if it doesn't make sense to put some kind of a contingency in this budget, just to give you some wiggle room to deal with some of these things. I mean, we talked about maybe needing a place for overflow parking. I know in the contract, there's a lot of things that we're going to pay for. I don't know if we figured out if we're doing a DJ or not. A lot of those extra staffing costs so that we have safety and cleanliness and not an overburden to our own staff. I'm not sure if that's all going to fit into a $2,000 budget. So I don't know. I would feel like that would be helpful to have a little bit of contingency in the budget.
That would always, flexibility is always nice. That's true.
Are you meaning like contingency to like raise that number?
So like a line item
Okay.
with, say $5,000 in it, that means, if we are having expenses, that there's an understanding going in that we don't have everything nailed down yet, and that the staff has to be able to move quickly on some of these things.
Dr.
So
Brandt?
as a point of clarification, so is this important because is the contract like a not to exceed amount?
The contract's only for event management services. All the other costs will be directly with us. So it's 25,000. So we're not going to change that. I think that 5,000 extra is for the other costs that might happen. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what we're seeing, the number that is like set in stone, like that's the 25,000.
Mhm.
Everything else is just, this is your estimate of what it's going to cost, but it's not like we're allocating these as new line items.
Yeah, it's estimates or quotes we've received.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, I mean, I'm comfortable with either one because it seems like it's not set in stone either way.
Dr. Dashler?
I just wanted to thank Jonathan and were all of you involved in this? All of you all for putting this together, because I did feel strongly at the last meeting that there should be some type of event that the IVCSD sponsored, just to create kind of a cultural change and to have consistency. So I'm really pleased that you all have put this together. I think it looks really good and fun. So the comment that I wanted to make was, I think I have no idea if 25,000 is a lot, but I do understand we're on short notice. And so that means that we have to pay someone to do this work. And I guess what I would say is my hope is that next year that we can start this process sooner and just try and institutionalize this as a process that begins sooner so that we don't see these large costs, because that is quite a bit. So that's all I wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, we had an unfortunate planning timeline with how we went about it. We chose to do certain things, but I think it's worked out overall. We have to eat this cost if we want to do this. And I think we discussed having a meeting in April after Deltopia to debrief and start looking forward already, like right away. So, yeah.
I was wondering about that idea of having like a debrief meeting. Have we already mentioned that concept with IVRPD?
I haven't let IVRPD directly know because we just talked about it late last week. So yeah, I will talk. They have a big event today.
Of course, yeah. Okay. Any other board members have comments, questions?
Oh, I had something else I wanted to ask. I remember that last year there were delivery drivers on DP, and I just wonder, as a part of the letter, are we going to talk about the letter separately?
It's the next item.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll talk about that.
I keep almost jumping that same line. Okay, Dr. Brandt.
Well, I just want to share, because I know at this point, it's funny. I feel like such a veteran of this this fight to make Deltopia safer at this point. And we've gone through so many town halls and so many just meetings that it almost might feel unceremonious where we, have this item and don't have much discussion. And I don't want to say anything too long-winded, but just to share, Jonathan had forwarded us just some public comment from one of the long-term residents, I think, that had shared just some concerns about the idea. And I think that that person may have not known that we had done one last year. But just in reading that and in responding when talking with her, it reinvigorated me into how important what we're doing is. This is, I think, the biggest contribution that we can make towards making Deltopia safer.
Security's here.
Okay. All right, a little jarring. Yeah, so safety. This is the biggest contribution that we really can make to safety by trying to draw people away from places where there may be unsafe behaviors happening and into a place where it's really all about community and it's all about the arts and the culture. And I think that I still have the vision that over time, this is something that is going to grow in a sustainable, slow manner in order to eventually one day become the main event. And I think that that will really be transformative for the community in so many ways. Imagine if we didn't have to have the conversation about, wow, how do we stop the delivery trucks from coming down DP during Deltopia? And we got to talk about other things like, how do we make sure that we keep this event staffed up to the point where, it's safe and it's inclusive and it's welcoming. I just think that would be really awesome. There's so many things in IV that we're just like perpetually reactive to because it feels like we don't have the power and agency to change it. But I think with this, we are really showing that over time, we will have the power to change things. And we're already starting to see the culture shift. Over 1,100 people served last year, and I'm hopeful that it will be many more this year. So I'll be enthusiastically supporting this.
Yeah, I agree with Director Brandt. I think that this is a really important event as far as community building goes. And I do think that that's one of the things we should be focusing on as a community services district. Deltopia is an event that's very visible. And I think that having the location be Little Acorn Park makes it draws people a lot more than having something on campus did. So yeah, I'm optimistic for the success of this event this year.
All right, well, having heard some nice discussion on this item, do any board members wish to make a motion? Move to approve. Any seconds? Second by Scholes.
Really quick, is that, are we approving the proposed budget or with that 5,000 contingency?
With 5,000.
All right. Is there any public comment on this motion? Yes.
Again, I have to say it is about public safety. And I think that the Little Acorn Park, if you are going to have an event, I think that Little Acorn Park may have a bigger draw. Because it's closer to the access point to where we can come into from Embarcadero Road. With all that said, IVRPD, one of the reasons they couldn't fully participate in this is because the planning window was just much too short. And Lucidity, which would be who they would entrust to handle this event, they have the Lucidity Festival. So that kind of put a hindering aspect to it. But I think that, maybe after the debriefing that you recommended the event, and going forward, I think that by collaborating with IVRPD, I think that, you have a bigger window of planning to come up with something that would definitely be something to talk about. And it would focus on the community. I just think that, it was just too short of planning for anybody. It was kind of rusted, so that's just my take on that. And just wanted to share that. But Little Acorn Park, I think, is probably a better placement of the event than over here, because that's kind of away from the entry zone. That's the entry zone up there. So just simple area logistics. That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
I get to comment twice on this because I didn't mention that maybe doing some of this other stuff could pay for all of this stuff and it be like the biggest moneymaker for the community services district. I think that's it.
All right. Any public comments on Zoom? No. All right. I'd like to bring this motion to a vote. All those opposed, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye or yes. All opposed, please say no.
Aye.
Yes.
No.
Okay. That motion passes 6-1-0-0 to approve the proposed Spring Festival budget and contracts with the contingency edition. I'd like to now move on to item 4.3, letter to the county and UCSB on parking on Del Playa during Deltopia.
Excellent. So our ad hoc committee discussed this as something we should do, and it came up at the last board meeting as well. So I'll turn it over to our ad hoc to explain anything about this and why you think this is important. I can fill in afterwards. Yeah. I don't want to take it. It's your
We
idea.
probably already discussed it a little bit, but it seems like the parked cars create a tighter walkway in the middle of the street. There's a certain amount of activity on the sidewalks where the sight lines are blocked. So from a safety concern, it seems like it would be important to be able to see if anything was going on in the bushes, either somebody having some kind of a drug or alcohol overdose or any kind of violence going on. And then also we feel like the whole idea of the water and the toilets is a key concept in our whole effort. And obviously it's very, very crowded there. So having cars not parked in the street seems to also open up a lot of space for some of those other things that we had planned. So that's why we thought this was important. I have reached out to Scott McGolfin, the Public Works Director, and he said that he actually misunderstood it to be closing the street, which is not what we'd asked. But he felt like they would defer to the sheriff on whatever the sheriff wanted to do. So, we're just kind of in a little bit of a loop there, but nobody's been negative about it. So, and it seems like just having it be a no parking zone is pretty nominally invasive. I know that in places that I habituate all over Santa Barbara, there'll be no parking on this day, signs come up, out of the blue, and, nobody thinks anything of it. That's just what the rule is for the day, so.
Dr. Schultz.
And we spent a lot of time discussing where we would put the cars, but IV does not have the space to accommodate the amount of cars that we want to clear for sight lines and safety. So hence this letter to the school, because UCSD is the place that has the most accessible safe parking, especially to get cars off that street.
All right, Dr. Freeman.
With respect to the sheriff's department, has anyone talked to them? Are we not expecting them to close down the street as they have, I think, even last year?
They didn't do it last year. They haven't done it in.
They just have
many
checkpoints
years.
and they were allowing.
Checkpoints.
Okay.
Yeah, but they haven't closed parking or restricted parking.
I didn't try to drive that far
Yeah.
south. I just saw them with giant checkpoint things and I assumed that was to stop cars, but I guess there were some people who were able to just drive through that. Like you just had to talk to the cop?
You were able to, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I
So
saw
I-
cars go through.
So on that, okay, from that standpoint, then I don't know if when for other events, maybe long ago when the street had been closed down, has UCSB stepped in like this in order to provide alternative parking options? I can't remember if that has happened before.
Yeah, me and Director Deschler talked about it today. I mean, historically, like, I remember what was done for Halloween. I don't remember what was done for Deltopia, but in the past for Halloween, you would buy a night and weekend permit and then return it after Halloween was over. So it would be an upfront larger cost, and then you'd get the money back after you refunded it if you used it just for the weekend. But I think you said that the pass this time is $18, $17 for the whole quarter, for the rest of the
For
quarter.
nights and weekends.
For nights and weekends, so people would be able to use that option.
And that was, because the memory that I have, that it's probably very corrupt and possibly entirely the opposite of what was true, was that UCSB would effectively during Halloween, like restrict their parking and say that even though normally you could buy permits on this day, today you cannot buy permits on this day.
For non-resident, for non-students.
For non-students, okay, but
non-students.
then if to the extent to which we have people who are living here who are not students of UCSB, but are SBCC students or are just non-students, do we have a solution for those people or?
We don't have a clear one yet. We had our committee discuss asking Ivy Elementary or using the county parking lots like this one and the solar lot. So there isn't a set solution, but that is, we have put out feelers.
Were there might very well, I'm not asking this from a leading question. I'm very curious. Were there reported damage to cars last year with the Deltopia with the street not being closed? I mean, I can show photos of Halloween with cars, people standing on them, doing all sorts of ridiculous things. But I'm just wondering, last year, were there?
I don't know about reports, but I remember in the debrief meeting, there was, the sight lines and the emergency access was definitely brought up. I don't remember about specific damages reported. I'm sure there was, but we did, the sight lines issue was brought up.
I guess my issue with this is that to me, this isn't necessarily just a nominal difficulty on people in an area that has extreme impacts on parking, which is different from in other places where you see. And one of the reasons why we have the crazy thing with the street sweepers and the thing with Toledo West Sanitary was because just shutting down streets here temporarily for things like street sweeping is considered to be not a place we could go because we did not have enough parking for that. And so to the extent to which last year they didn't shut down the street, if last year there wasn't the damage that was cited as one of the reasons in the description just now in order to do the shutdown, I appreciate the sidelines and things like that, but honestly, I think that sometimes the sheriff is always optimizing so horribly for their own convenience that they're willing to put aside the convenience of the people who live in the community. I would love to see UCSB step in and provide parking for people, but if they're only going to provide parking for UCSB students, and we have a number of City College students here, and I continually feel really bad for the effects that we have on the non-students in the area, I cannot vote for this recommendation.
Dr. Brandt.
Well, I sympathize with Jay's position, and just as I remember a number of years ago when back in the battle days, I guess you could say, during Deltopia, the community was very frustrated that there were these restrictions being put into place, and it was, I think, lumped in with just the symbol or became part of the one of many symbols of the poor response, and the fact that there only was a response in terms of the sort of that law enforcement side of things, and there wasn't any of this proactive stuff like we're doing now with the event planning. And of course, people are always going to be frustrated if you tell them to move their car and they can't find a parking space, right? So I struggle with that, and I struggle with some of the things that Jay mentioned, just about how it would practically work. I do want to share that I think that from what you all have expressed, the concern is both placement of some of these services like the water and the bathrooms, and it's also partially a concern about the sight lines. I wonder if we can tackle the first two and maybe see if we can get a limited no parking sections in the sections where we think that it would be best warranted, as a way of starting small, I guess, maybe, and testing it out and seeing if in future years we want to build up to a full no parking again. And I think that might be a strategic way of going about it too, because there probably will be some people that view this and view it through the old lens that we're trying to get people away from, which is that anything we do differently during Deltopia response equals we're promoting the party. And I think we all know that that's not true, and that's why, you know, we are doing things differently. That being said, I think that it may be received better in that light. So I'm interested in that. I'll be interested to see if other people agree or disagree or have other thoughts.
Dr. Deschler.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said, Spencer, because one thing is, I think we need to consider, if we're asking for parking to be restricted, that is going to impact a lot of people. And there may be some people that do not want to move their vehicles for a variety of reasons, right? And I think I'm not necessarily in support of the direction of this letter. I think there's other ways to go about where we want to be without sending this kind of letter. I do think we need to engage with the sheriff's department and with UCSB and with the county. But I think asking for restricted parking on DP sends a message that we've tried to kind of shy away from in previous years. And that is like over-regulating and creating I don't think that we want to be making it easier for people to have gatherings in the streets. And so that, and the fact that I think that some people may not want to move their vehicles. I think we ought to give people the option, students the option, let them know about the nights and weekends parking, because it's $17.50. Students can park there and they can park on campus and for the rest of the quarter until June on nights and weekends. So that's a very easy thing for people who want to be able to move their vehicles. But requiring to move the vehicles and saying that cars have been heavily damaged, I don't know if we have the evidence of that. And I think it's just a little strange to write a joint letter to Public Works and UCSB. I think if you're going to go about this, there are other ways to achieve the objective. And I definitely think you need to involve the sheriff department, because they are going to be the ones that make this decision. It's not going to be Public Works. So I think if truly you want to create more opportunities for people to see water and the safety stations and the bathrooms, do some limited red zones for parking. But I would not move to restrict parking on TP. Give people the option, but don't restrict. That's my opinion.
I have a question. So you just mentioned about like limited red zoning. Could you like explain a little bit more what you imagine that looks like?
I'm just extrapolating on what Spencer said, is that if the idea is that we want to make areas on DP accessible for people to use the restroom and to take advantage of water stations, let's have red zones around those areas so that people can access those services. I also think, I also would talk to the sheriff's department about delivery vehicles, because that was something that we saw last year that was a little bit scary for all of us, and to see the end delivery drivers. So I think there's some limited things that we could ask for to improve upon last year. Does that make sense about the limited red zones?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I'm glad that you also mentioned your previous question about the delivery vehicles, because that's something also I want to figure out a way to address that as a safety concern. Director Freeman.
For clarity's sake, I would be quite comfortable with Spencer's position on this, and I really like the comments.
And I just wanted to say that one of our intents was that we would find alternate parking. So we thought that the university was the most obvious one, but if they're not, able to help us with that, we also thought about maybe going to Isla Vista School or a lot at the edge of town. So, we did want to pursue that, because obviously there are a lot of cars that park there, and if they can't park there, they need to park somewhere. So that would be part of this. And then If it turns out that it's a better option to have it be less than, no parking on a couple of blocks of Del Playa, I think that that will come out through all of these discussions with the various entities that are involved. So I wouldn't think that just because we're asking for this doesn't mean that we wouldn't be able to compromise into some other solution.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that addition. Does anyone else on the ad hoc committee like to kind of, do you support that kind of addition or evolution?
I mean, I would much rather see limited parking in some areas than just letting people park wherever. I do think that the concerns about where people are going to park, and specifically non-UCSB students, are valid ones. And we should only be doing this if we're able to find alternative parking.
Dr. Schultz?
Yeah, that's my big one, that there needs to be fair, accessible, alternative parking for people. If we're asking them not to be parking on Delphi, because otherwise that just seems rather unreasonable.
Well, so it appears that this motion, or not motion, but this letter needs a little bit of reworking or maybe some additions to show like our preparedness for flexibility. It's kind of what I feel like I'm hearing from board members, is that we want to make a few adjustments and also be flexible, but we're asking of our neighbors to participate in. So I think that there will need to be some changes to this letter. Before I go to any other actions, I'd like to open up to public comment. If anyone in the public, yes.
So as far as the parking for this whole thing, I was thinking that maybe like State Street has, you don't have any cars there anymore. And when somebody says, well, you know, people shouldn't be parking in the streets, I mean, if there's cars coming down, you know, that makes total sense. But, you know, if you could just say, you know, on Del Playa, there's not gonna be any cars, I mean, people have been told, you know, and they love how State Street is no more cars, you know, bicycles and stuff. So that's just an option that I wanted to have to maybe like permits, you know, temporary permits for people who live on Del Playa, you know, and it's more appropriate for them to have their cars there than people coming in from out of town. That's it.
Yes.
So one of the things, there's a couple things that stand out in all the comments from the board. And one of those is, you know, I keep hearing, you know, students, but there are people that live in IV that aren't students or are students at SBCC. So if there is going to be a comprehensive parking policy that makes UCSB parking lots available, it should be across the board for the community. But I also agree that we shouldn't force people to move their car. There's that libertarian side of me that says that. We shouldn't require people to move their cars. If they want to move it, fine. If they don't want to move it, park at your own risk, which then leads to, we go back to public safety. And damage to private property is, and it's a aspect of public safety that we have to consider. I think that, you know, you put out that door hanger, and I think that maybe warning people, if you park on Del Playa, your car could undergo damage. But, you know, one of the things I keep hearing is UCSB, and, you know, UCSB has put a, I'm not going to use the word burden, but it's definitely one of the affecting variables of our community. And maybe they should just issue a free parking permit for residents of the area, student or non-student, on the campus. And at the solar lot over here, there's plenty of room. There is plenty of room. For people on Del Playa, definitely plenty of room. One of the things, going back to damage to vehicles, and Director Dreschler, you know, there's not enough evidence supporting it. One of the reasons you don't have the evidence is because the metric of reporting isn't there. A lot of people, they get their car, you know, they get their rear mirror taken out or something. They go, oh, it's just IV, and they don't report it, except maybe their insurance company. That's about it. It's a complex issue. I'm not going to say it isn't, but I think that UCSB can accommodate the the Yellow Vista community and the UCSB parking lot with a temporary permit for that weekend. Should they want to move their car, but it should be a choice. And I agree with the limited red zone idea as well. because you're going to need that for emergency services, restrooms, water stations. I think it's, this is one to definitely think over. The letter might need some rewriting, some rethinking. Nothing's going to be perfect. I'm going to be the first to say that, but something in place proactively is better than nothing in place and then complaining about it reactively. That's, again, I think that it's a move in the right direction. I think there should be mention of parking issues on the door hanger itself to tell people you might encounter problems with your car if you park in no line. As far as out of town, another thing at that, as far as out of towners parking at La Vista, you may want to reach out to all the management companies and tell them to reiterate to their tenants, don't have people coming in from out of town taking up parking spaces in the apartment complexes, because tenants are paying for those in their rent, and there's just not enough room. It's going to create a lot of friction with a lot of people. I think that should be something that might be looked into. I'm not saying it has to be done, but it should be.
I thank you for those comments. Is there anyone on Zoom with public comments? All right, I'll come back to the board. Do any other members of the board have comments like to make right now for discussion on this item? Director Deschler.
The other thing I wanted to add is that we have no idea how many cars are on DP. We have no idea. And by making a request to limit parking, we have no idea of how many people park on IV, how many are SBC students, how many are UCSB students, how many are other people who live in the community. I just think we're opening up a huge can of worms. I think there are ways to get at what we're trying to achieve without doing a blanket restriction of parking. I do think the letter needs to be tweaked. I think it should go to the sheriff. I think it needs to be redone slightly to Vice Chancellor McPherson as well as Director McGolpin. I think that we can say to them, listen, we have a concern about the safety of people who live on the street and about their vehicles. We want to work with you to come up with some solutions. These are some of the ideas we have. That's what I would suggest. But some of the things in here, they just, like we're saying, these cars have been heavily damaged. We don't know that to be true. And when you write things that you don't know to be true, you kind of destroy your credibility a little bit. So I think this letter needs to be just toned down a little bit. And I think that we should make an overture to those entities to meet with them to come up with solutions, but also propose some of our own. And the other thing I want to say is that there are people that have disabilities or who work late at night, late night jobs. There's a safety element if you're requiring people to park away from their home. And I think we need to consider that. So those are just some of my concerns.
I appreciate you voicing those concerns. I definitely want to think about a point you just added about providing solutions when we have this conversation with our partners. And in the letter, I would like that we could just have a more like possible solutions to offer our partners instead of kind of providing a less than detailed version of it. That's my one ask for the next iteration or edits made to this letters, or if when we do have a conversation in person or however that happens with these partners, that we do have like a list of like ideas of what we think could be done in order to like create some solutions for our neighbors that aren't just UC students, but anyone in Isla Vista. So yeah, appreciate you adding those comments. Do any other board members have comments?
Could I say something else?
Yes.
I just want to say one comment about UCSB providing parking to non-UCSB folks. The challenge is that in recent years, it's been all about how can we limit out-of-towners from the community. And if we are going to provide a vehicle by, I like that little pun, if we're going to provide an opportunity for people who to park on campus, and we're not requiring some type of either they're a student or their proof of residency, then all of a sudden we are inviting people who don't live here to park on campus. And that's exactly what we're trying to get away from. That's why the city of Goleta does their parking restriction, is because it's all about how to limit people that don't live here. So I think it's worth thinking about is how, and this is part of our parking program, like how can we figure out who lives here so that we can in fact address our parking programs to people who live here without inviting people to come and park on campus or in IV. And I think that is something we can put in the letters, that we can ask the vice chancellor, who's going to kill me, but you could say to him, if there's a way to prove residency, could those entities be able to qualify for a nights and weekend for this weekend? That may be a possibility, but I also know that's staff work. It's extra work for people, and it's not as easy as to just provide parking for UCSB residents. So anyways, FYI on that.
Any other directors have comments they'd like to make at this point? Dr. Brandt.
Yeah, well, I so appreciate hearing the impetus and the idea and sort of the context for where this came from the committee. And I think that while I understand the perspective, I think I continue to have the concerns about how it will be received. And I mean, I guess for me too, I'm wondering, and I think Kirsten may have even mentioned this, why do we even need a letter to accomplish these things in the first place? I think that what I would like to see is I would like to see us give direction on what the parameters are that we want. For example, do we want to see the whole street parking totally closed? Do we want to see it limited to areas that are related to our services, such as the porta potties? Just give direction to staff to go ahead and communicate this with our partners, because the way that I see it, when we have letters on our board agenda, the purpose is for advocacy and to give maybe a gentle nudge to these entities. I don't see that as necessary, I guess, in this situation, at least for how I'm thinking about it. I think that we can just give this direction to staff. And one of the things I'd like to add to that too, as has been mentioned a couple of times, the delivery trucks. I think it would be good to send a letter to whoever the appropriate government relations people are at UPS and FedEx and DHL, just alerting them to the fact that this event exists, maybe attaching some pictures of what happened last year and encouraging them to pause their routes on that day, or to avoid a situation like that in the future. That's a whole other can. Well, I don't know if we have that.
We do.
We do.
It's driving around a green tank.
The tank. Yeah, I hope that the car with the little light up thing, John and I talked about that. But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm at, and it's not to say that, I mean, in the future I could envision saying what I really want for a weekend like this is for it to be a totally closed down street. To truly promote that safety. But as I think even folks on the committee have pointed out, we don't really have a guarantee that the parking would even really come through. So so that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, we'll do, if any other directors don't have any other comments or additions they'd like to speak now about this letter, I feel like we've given adequate information.
We can do what's being asked, which is get the intersections, try to be, no parking, but we don't need, I guess, a motion or a new letter for that. Yeah.
Or a motion maybe just to direct staff to further explore this with our partners, with the understanding that we would not want to restrict parking unless we had a viable option or alternative for people.
Yeah, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right. I'll go to public comment real quick on that motion. Yes.
Rewording it's not a bad idea. Also focusing on the stakeholders of the community is not a bad idea either. Another stakeholder in the community, I keep hearing Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office being brought into the mix, but also you may also want to consider California Highway Patrol as well, because they do technically, as an unincorporated district, they do have jurisdiction on the streets. So CHP is another venue to reach out to as well. Just wanted to throw that out there because I think the more help you get, and you may get a varied array of responses, and from those you can formulate a plan. So I'm gonna recommend reaching out to CHP as well.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? All right. Okay, so our motion was to direct staff to investigate and work with our partners on different solutions revolving around reducing parking on Del Playa and making sure that we have solutions for our residents. That get the general idea?
I wrote direct staff to explore limited options with partners for this goal, but not restrict parking on the entire street.
Okay. Right, so we had a motion, we had a second. I'd like to bring this.
Could we add to that and to reach out to delivery?
Oh, yeah,
companies?
yeah.
And I have an idea. I wonder if that's even something that might be helpful coming from the county CEO as
Yeah,
well.
probably the county with other jurisdiction.
Is that modification, but almost more importantly, the original modification, okay with the people who made the motion? Because that is not the motion that was made. I like this version better myself. I was like, not, I was like, do I even go yes? I don't know. This is my life.
I couldn't hear the whole thing.
Good Lord.
So could you repeat that motion with Spencer's addition, and then if the folks who made and then seconded, did they approve those additions?
You want me to repeat?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
sorry. You asked Carrie to repeat what she said. Sorry. Motion to direct staff to explore limited options with partners for this goal, but not restrict parking on the entire street, and to contact delivery companies. And I haven't finished that part yet.
And then I think it was,
I didn't really intend for it to say not restrict
Oh.
parking on the entire street.
That's what I'm sorry.
I didn't intend for it to necessarily insist on no parking on the entire street, but I felt like if that ended up being the solution that everybody came up with, I would like that solution too, so.
So cut that part and just say.
That would not be the motion, not.
Carrie's motion, which you had like a compromise in some sense, which was to not restrict parking in the entire street unless there were alternatives provided.
Well,
Something
not
like that.
restrict any parking.
Not restrict unless they're alternative provided. Yeah, that was like a key
Yeah,
thing.
so that was
Okay.
important to me, that we not restrict parking unless we provided viable alternatives.
Without that part, I was gonna vote no. With that part, I'm just on the fence.
So I'm having trouble writing this, like, we're gonna restrict it only if there's, but I thought we were only gonna do like
Well,
spot restrictions.
I was
that
just
aren't-
saying it as restrict parking, so I wasn't clarifying how restricted. I was figuring that would be part of the discussion that we had with our partners.
Okay, so I'll write,
IVCSD doesn't have jurisdiction
We
to
can't.
restrict parking.
yeah,
Right.
so
We all know
yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
So.
Yeah, so let me try rewrite. So direct staff to explore other options with partners to restrict parking if there's availability for.
Maybe at various levels, restrict parking.
If I can jump in here, I think it might be
Yes.
easier. It might be easier not to have a formal motion and just give direction to staff, and then it can just be consensus of the board. That way we are not articulating a very narrow and specific motion, and it can be more general for staff to bring back options to the board.
That's why she's our attorney.
I'll take that modification.
So I guess the proper way to do it would be for whoever made the substitute motion. I can't remember if that was Director Freeman made the second motion. So
It wasn't just a motion.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan did.
so
Yeah,
everyone.
Jonathan wrote down something that was slightly.
Oh, okay.
incorrect. That was-
I misheard the original motion. Yeah.
Okay, so procedurally, whoever made the second motion would withdraw their motion, and then whoever made the first motion would both withdraw their motion, and then it would just be consensus of the board, further direction to staff.
Okay, would you like to
All right,
withdraw
my motion.
in the second, like,
I will withdraw.
okay, so we have withdrawn the motion. And is that enough information for staff?
Yes, I heard from the board that we'll try to get small restrictions around like the main areas where we have an intersection where we could put in some bathrooms, but not like a blanket restriction, but little like couple parking spots essentially. Is that, and see what works with our partners. Like, we're not going to direct it, but see what works with them. Is that good?
That's okay.
Okay,
And contact the delivery.
Yes.
And what, contact delivery?
Yeah.
Let's give Spencer that job.
okay. Thank you to council. Thank you, Jonathan, for handling that raucous motion. Okay, so let's move on to our item 4.4, the facility use agreement with Santa Barbara Hillel for the Isla Vista Safety Station.
We'll just need to delay this one. We're just working out some final details with UCPD and Hillel. So just give us some more time to figure out some details that came up.
All right.
Could I ask a question about it? I was a little surprised to see that the agreement looked like just the agreement they'd used for somebody who wanted to have a reception or a program there. It didn't seem at all tailored to what I would think is very specific and unusual use. So shouldn't it be?
Our legal team reviewed it, and that's, we have a standard facility use agreement, but they wanted to use this one. And our legal team did review it and said that we should just attach the CSO contract as an amendment, as like a attachment to this, just to go together. But I didn't hear that from Ross when I sent it to him. But if it is the board's, if you would like to use our standard agreement, I can ask.
It just, to me, it said nothing about what we really are going to do there. It just, it didn't seem at all like descriptive of our relationship. It's a good point.
I'll speak with them about that.
Okay. Well, I feel like we're gonna have to return to this at a later, this particular item at a later date, so we can, speak more on the specifics at that time. Let's move on to our next item. This came from the policy committee, item 4.5. The board will consider approval of the sick time policy as recommended by the policy committee.
So I don't know if any policy committee members want to speak on this, but we had this at our December meeting. The board had a lot of different ideas of how we can revise it. I think the policy committee took all those under consideration and made those revisions. And we are going beyond the legal minimums. So we're providing more than that's legally mandated here for sick time for our temporary and part-time employees. So yeah, it should be ready for approval. But
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. Second, I'd like to quickly see if there's any public comment on approval of this policy update to the sick leave time.
Have we missed our comment period?
We'll come back to that. Right? Okay. I see no public comment on this item, so I will now bring it back to the board for board commentary on this item. Yes, you may speak.
I wanted to ask a question about the, I think it's H. After 5 scheduled workdays, consecutive use of paid sick leave, employee and general manager shall meet. So basically what you're saying is a person can use 5 days of work leave, sick leave, then they would meet in some way with the general manager to see if they need to use an additional 5 days. Oh, and then they produce a medical letter. Okay, got it.
yeah, so just to explain the committee's position here was we didn't think that asking for the doctor's note after 5 days was like feasible for most people. Like you might not be able to go to the doctor and get a doctor's note by the 5th day, but at least a check-in with the GM just to know what's going on. Like how bad is the situation? Do I need to really be out 5 more days? And then if they are going to be out the 10, they'd come back with the note.
That sounds good. Thank you.
All right, are there any other board comments or questions?
I just noticed that we removed the provision where we embargoed their sick time and not let them use it right away. And I think that is a humane thing to do. So I was pleased to see that.
One noteworthy thing we also changed is part-time permanent employees accrue the same amount of sick time as full-time.
Yeah,
So it's not a prorated just because you're part-time. I guess the discussion was, people are sick, not on a part or full-time basis.
Right. Yeah, that was good too.
All right, so I feel really proud about the work we did here with this policy. And no other members have comment, I'd like to go back to that motion, which was to approve the updated sick time policy. And then we had a second, who seconded?
Remember if I made the motion or something.
Carrie made the motion.
Okay, then I seconded.
Okay, okay, then I'd like to go to the board for a vote. All directors in favor, please vote aye. All opposed, please vote no. Aye.
Aye.
Yes. Aye. Okay, that motion passes 7-0-0-0. Now let's move on to our board vacancy policy, another item brought forward by the policy committee.
Great, and so for this one is partially a mistake that I made in 2018, where we didn't have a record of us actually, we had written, and the policy committee had considered this policy in 2018, but I didn't have a record of the board actually approving it back then. So we looked at it again, made some small changes, but otherwise it's the same policy that we looked at 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and that we used. We did follow this anyways for this process. So we're just now making sure it's on the books.
Are there any questions about this item?
I just had a couple of little picky things.
Yes, please.
One is, we say that we're gonna publish in a local paper. And it's more usual, I think, to say a local newspaper of general circulation, something like that, just to be clear about what you're talking about.
There just aren't any of them.
But no,
Yeah.
I think there are some that do
Yeah,
qualify, so we can.
And then when somebody runs for a position that's already been filled by somebody on a temporary basis by appointment, it says that then they'll take the job, they'll get the seat once. But it seems like once the election results are certified, I mean, to me, it wasn't clear enough about when they actually took the seat, the person who was replacing the temporarily appointed person.
It is immediate. Do you want, we
That's
can write that
That
in. but yeah.
immediately after the election results are certified, right? I mean, it has to be clear that they won the election, and then it's immediate.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant when someone's appointed. When someone's appointed,
Yeah.
it's immediate. If you're elected, it's not until a certain date in December when you take
Okay,
office.
well,
Like
then I
the
think
second
that should
Friday.
be clear, because it wasn't clear to me
Okay.
when they would take it.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Director Freeman.
On that point, I mean, I would think that that's not really our policy, how the elections would work. Like, I would think that that's just whether it be county or probably state election law, and that it would just be, so we wouldn't, I mean, we could technically document something, but then I feel like we would have to be trying to track and update it. I would prefer to just defer to the state law on that. I also have a comment on I don't, unless we legally have to distribute our notice in a newspaper
We
general
do.
circulation,
We
I
do.
would like to, we do, okay, all right,
We did that this time.
cool.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that they're like specifically designed to make that expensive, and so
We have to do it for our
no one
budget.
reads them.
Because they know it's in all these.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it for our budget as well. There's the
Okay,
same rule for
alright,
the
yeah,
budget
cool.
notice. Yeah.
Director Brandt.
My one thought, and I don't really know if this is going to turn into a request for an amendment or not, but I'm looking at the second section where it describes the process for if the board fails to take action within 60 days and it goes to the Board of Supervisors. I really see that as a bad practice and don't think that that should be mentioned in the policy. If we were to get to that point, I think that it would be frankly an emergency situation. I don't even, for people, whether it's members of the public or board members looking at this policy in the future, I mean, frankly, I don't even want that to be something that's on the table, because I think as elected board members, we have a responsibility to make those tough decisions. and not turn into, gridlock, for example, if there was a contentious appointment, and just try to kick it to the Board of Supervisors. That seems irresponsible to me. It may be practice for others, but it's not how I think we should do business. And I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. I kind of just want that part taken out. But I'll see what my colleagues have to say. Maybe I'm being too sensitive.
Director Freeman.
So I don't quite the strong version of it that you do, because I feel that part of it is that it might be that there was a set of emergencies or procedural issues that end up occurring that end up causing delays that then lead to our district being unable to satisfy it, as opposed to merely like, I just don't want this to happen. So, but barring that, I appreciate the point about it being in the policy. Feels maybe not required and leaves the door open to feeling like it's part of the process.
Right,
like it's
right, exactly.
like it's by reading it, you might think, okay, well, one option I have is to simply not take, and I don't really.
Yeah.
I agree that that's something that it should be like, if we fail, then from that standpoint, I think it already is the like Government Code 1780 or whatever says that if we fail to do that, then it's just taken out of our hands. So.
Do we have a need or requirement to have this particular section in the policy?
It's not required. It's just citing the government code and letting you know what happens. It's like the policy is a guide for in the future when we aren't here and people have to do an appointment. So it's like letting them know, here's the law associated with this statement, but you don't have to do that.
Got you.
But it is going to be the law anyways. Like that is the case. So
Yes.
you don't have to mention the policy, but that is still the case.
Yes. All right. Do any other board members have questions on this policy? Yes. Director.
I just have comments. Can, when you go through to clean this up, can you just be consistent with like capitalization? And-
Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay. Did I bring that up already?
No. Our
Okay.
policy committee, we said, sometimes board is lowercase.
Yeah, I know. It's insane,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm sure, I'm so glad I'm not the
It's
only one.
part of our
Okay.
indexing process, we'll
Okay.
do things like that. Yeah.
You're making me feel like like I don't notice things.
Did you not notice this? Yeah.
All right. I'll quickly ask if there's any public comment regarding this policy. All right, I see none. Okay. So considering the discussion on the second item about vacancy, do we have to go back to policy committee in order to make a
You can just make
change?
a motion
Okay.
with, eliminating the second sentence of part 2.
All right, well, would any directors like to make a motion or discuss further?
I'm happy to make the motion to adopt the policy, striking the second sentence of section 2.
Right, do we have a second?
I'll second. I'll see the second.
All right, motion is made by Director Brandt, seconded by Director Scholes. I'd like to then go to a vote on this particular item as moved. All directors in favor of approval of this board vacancy policy with the amendment, please approve with an aye and please disapprove with a no. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0-0-0. And this board vacancy policy is approved. Now we'd like to move on to our last item, the community center and room policy matrix.
And I hope everyone was able to see the edit here, because we had some issues at policy committee that I think I fixed in terms of seeing what the strikeout was, but
I can see the strikeout.
you can see that. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, I'm glad I fixed it. And I fixed the rows.
You're like, this
So
is the
you see
same thing.
there's a new row system. So policy committee looked at this. So we're going to want to make some more changes in the future as Maya works on, how we can optimize the use of the community center. But one quick change we're just making now is removing the COVID-19 regulation, since the emergency declaration ends tomorrow or today, whichever way you want to look at it. So we're not requiring the vaccines by the host, which was never something we enforced. We asked the host to enforce. It was always confusing on how that exactly happened. And then the mask mandate was, if the county has one, we go with that. So that's not going to be the case anymore. So we're just can strike those out, and we reordered the advanced notice rules on here just to make it easier for people to read. So thank you, Director Freeman, for that.
All right, do any directors have any questions considering this policy and matrix? Director Freeman.
So I actually only, as you said that, did I look and it was like, oh yeah, you did make the change I suggested. You also left the
I
color
know,
coding
I
and
just
now I don't
realized,
know
like,
what that means.
Yeah, the colors are wrong. We'll fix the colors,
Okay.
don't worry. I just noticed that right now.
All right, any other directors have questions? All right, I see no questions from the directors. Let's go to the public comment quickly. If there's any concerns or comments regarding this group use intensity policy matrix. All right, I see no public comment. We'll go back to the board for any like last minute discussions or any changes. It sounds like we're going to approve, or we're going to be voting to approve this policy, but there will be changes in the future. Is that?
Yeah, we're approving this update, but we'll have more updates maybe in the summer.
Got it. All right, any directors, would they like to make a motion or further discussion? Dr. Deschler.
Can you date this matrix so that when there's future changes that we can see the iterative changes? Or is
Yeah.
where's this located?
So this is a standalone doc just for this discussion.
Okay.
It's in the policy manual though, but we do a
Okay.
live update of that. So
Got it.
we don't have a track changes for the policy manual, but
Okay.
that's a good idea. Maybe it's like a project we can put in our list to look at.
Dr. Freeman.
Somebody commented on the capitalization, the other thing. Why do governments call tables matrices? I've noticed it's a pattern. The county does it too. It's not a matrix, it's a table.
I don't remember why I picked this name. It was- there must have been a reason. I think I was working with Ross on it, and
The county does
yeah.
it too. It's not like, it's
Yeah.
like, it seems like a pattern, but I just don't.
Yeah, I think he had
Sounds
shared
fancy.
me like some other agencies, and there's just. Yeah.
What is a matrix? I know my husband,
Yeah.
I know my husband likes the movies, that's all I know. Oh, it's that math, that's why.
It's a particularly weird math thing, whereas tables is something that people use all the time.
So it says a matrix is a rectangular array of or table of numbers.
Are these numbers?
Symbols or expressions.
No, sorry. Symbols or expressions. Okay, forget it. It's late. It's late.
I've seen the county use matrix for things where it's just clearly like a question on the left and an answer on the right. They call it a matrix.
Okay.
We can get a new name next time.
Yeah,
I
okay.
move approval.
You move approval.
Yeah.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
All right.
Go.
Motion by Deschler, second by France. I'd like to bring this item to a vote. All approved, please say aye. All
Aye.
disapproved, please say no.
Aye.
Sorry, jump with the gun.
All right, this motion passes 7-0-0-0. And that concludes our discussion and action items. Now we'll move on to section 5, reports. Item 5.1, are there any reports from members of the board? Dr. Topliff.
I wanted to inform my fellow board members that today is the last day of Bob Geis's term, which I am completing. And I was very pleased to be appointed by the Board of Supervisors this morning to a 4-year term starting tomorrow.
Good job.
Thank you. We're really glad to have your service, and especially for another 4 years. That's great. You get to be 18 for 4 more years. Everyone's dream.
You get to go out for more beer.
We'll do
Oh,
it.
Well, the drinking age hasn't been lowered yet. Okay. Do any other directors have reports? Dr. Freeman?
In no small part because I couldn't find anyone else who's willing to do the job. I've been reelected as vice president of the California, or the local Santa Barbara County chapter of the California Special Districts Association.
Good job.
Right.
Good job.
Thank you for your service. Any other directors have reports they'd like to share? All right, I'll quickly share. I feel like this might get repeated elsewhere, but Dr. Topliff and Jonathan and I got to have a nice sit-down meeting with our district supervisor, Laura Capps, and covered a wide array of topics. And I feel very confident about our partnership. And I feel very confident that our district and our neighbors and our community will be heard and will be listened to and will be tasked for providing adequate and intelligent solutions for our different community needs. So I feel really confident about that partnership. And then it was nice also to see Supervisor Capps also at our lighting walk, which occurred on the beginning of the storm last week, which was very blustery and very cold. Jonathan did a great job organizing our team in the dark and showing us the different issues that need to be addressed. So I feel really proud to have gone on that walk. I didn't get to go last year. And it was really nice to be a part of it, despite how cold and intense that was, but it was very useful, very effective and informative for me. So yeah, I'm really glad that that happened. And that concludes my report. Now I'd like to move to, yes, Director Freeman.
So, sorry, we had to be organized in the dark, but the lights stopped working? I was
No, the lights were working, but we planned the lighting walk to happen at dark so we could notice where there needs to be lighting improvements. It was very dark.
The whole purpose of the walk.
Yeah, the plan was for it to be in the dark.
A demonstration.
Also, it was very useful to see how well the stargazing was. Me and Jonathan both remarked that even on some of our most well-lit streets, you could see multiple constellations, enjoy them, notice them. And it was about this time of night. It wasn't even late into the night. So it was good to participate. Dr. Brandt.
Not a report, but just wanted to thank Sydney and our staff for the communications around the storm. Fortunately, we continue to have these storms, and at least from the latest info I've seen, we may have another one coming before the end of this coming month. And so I just appreciate putting out that information and the safety information to continue to put that in people's minds, especially for our neighbors that live oceanside.
Right, thank you for that. Thanks to our staff and neighbors. Now I'd like to move on to item 5.2, reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Are there any committees that need to make a report? Okay, let's move on to item 5.3, a report from district council. Do we have any updates?
Yes, thank you. So I do have a proclamation here from Governor Newsom proclaiming the end of the state of emergency for COVID-19. That is effective tonight, or however, tonight at 11:59 p.m. So all executive orders issued with regard to COVID-19 and the state of emergency from the governor's office will also terminate tonight at 11:59 p.m. So now we just go back to regular Brown Act rules and the new AB 2449 rules that we have briefed you all on previously. So that's about it for me.
Dr. Brandt.
This is a more, well, I guess it's a question for council and for staff, but I know that we got a briefing about 2449, but I do think it would be helpful to have a more like in-depth presentation at maybe our retreat.
Okay, yeah, we can sure bring that back.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do any other directors have questions? Comments? All right, thank you very much for that update, Ms. Traxler. Like to move on to item 5.4, report from our general manager and staff.
Sorry, I was just working on something. All right, so I'll turn over to Sydney first on community engagement update.
Thanks, Jonathan. Do you mind just allowing screen share really quickly? Thank you. Perfect. All righty, let me just, we have so much going on that I feel like some images are nice to go along with what we're up to. So our, excuse me, our last cliff erosion and safety campaign was focused on do's and don'ts around the cliffs, and then safety and community resources. So just, I'll go through these kind of quickly, but just a few key things for people to kind of note, don't sit on the balcony, don't sit on the railings, don't go over the fence to retrieve anything, things like that. noting to have equivalent lighting, or excuse me, adequate lighting. We did put a notice in here around substance use, that it's just best to remain as safe as possible to prevent any accidents, to be an active bystander, contact your landlord with any issues around your balcony. Who to call. This information is always very helpful. It'll be on future messaging and outreach materials as well. Some information from Foot Patrol that if there isn't an emergency, people can call them to shut down a party without any consequences, that our safety stations and CSO officers are always available. A plug for UCSB's alcohol and drug program and resources that they offer. Same for SBCC. We've reached out to a couple different partners to get this information. And then again, some preventative resources that people can take for a Stop the Bleed training. So our next post is coming up on Monday, and it's going to be, we're switching gears to balcony safety and balcony overloading. So the yard sale and makers market is just around the corner. It's on Saturday, March 11th. It's going to be a day full of events. So it starts with the community-wide yard sale from 9 to 2, and then simultaneously in partnership with Thriftopia, we are hosting a makers market at the community center from 11 to 5. We'll be doing gift card giveaways as well for people attending the sale. And there'll also be an art gallery happening at the same time in the community center, where community members can check out local artists' take on activism and social justice. There'll also be just an interactive piece encouraging people to use their voice and take a stand. We'll have free food from Dink Bowls. We'll have community resources tabling. The Compost Collective will be there collecting non-perishable food if people want to start getting rid of those items before move out. And then people can also come and take that food as well if they need it. And then IVCC will redistribute the food in the community as well. So as of today, we have 51 signups for the yard sale. That includes 18 houses, and the rest will host at the community center, or we just got word today that we can host the overflow at Trigo Pasado Park as well, which is great. So a thank you to IVRPD for that. So from those 50 signups, that's about 125 people who will be participating on just the yard sale side of things. So it's super exciting. And we've just heard really great feedback from residents who are excited to have this opportunity. And then lastly, Jenna hired 4 new staff for her team, which is also exciting. IVCC is hosting their next community mural painting event this Friday, the 3rd, from 1 to 3 at St. Michael's Church. The first event was really successful and super fun. So everyone is invited to help paint the compost piles. Hopefully the rain won't deter that event. And then just before the mural painting, IVCC is partnering with DPW to host a worm bin workshop and demo as well. So that's from 11 to 12 also at St. Michael's Church. And then, as Marcos already mentioned, we had our lighting walk, and while volunteer turnout was low just due to the weather, we had a successful event with Supervisor Capps, and it was just good to learn from her and to also provide her just some institutional, like, historical roadblocks that we faced in terms of this ongoing issue that we have with lighting. And then last week, oops, I think I skipped one, but we also partnered with SBRN, as I mentioned. So we hosted our psychological first aid training this week in the community room. And that was a really successful event, and we're looking forward to the ones in April and May. And then the weather didn't totally dampen our outreach efforts last week. So we were at UCSB's rental fair for a housing mediation program, and then at the Zero Waste Festival as well. So that's it for my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Couple other things. So on Compost Collective, at the next board meeting, I'm going to have an interim staff restructure. We're just have, like what we mentioned at the last report they had, we have some student temporary positions where we have some opportunities to do some more with our students who've been working with us for a long time. So offering additional responsibilities for them. Ivy Beautiful, thank you, Sydney, for mentioning that on the lighting walk. We've talked about it a bit, but I think that the most impactful outcome from my view is our county supervisor Caps asking for a list of specific projects like light locations, paths of pedestrian light, conversions from lower wattage to higher wattage. And she just wants to tackle them one by one and get it done, kind of solve the issue definitively. It was really, we've never heard that before from a county supervisor on this issue. So really, really great to hear. We've also heard that UCSB is interested and possibly able to bring back the interpersonal violence investigator. So that discussion will come to the board because it's not currently in our budget, but we did discuss, bringing it back to, and they did commit to bring back the closeout report to look at the data of the performance of the program last year, which wasn't done after the contract had to end. So they promised to bring that, retrospective look back and discuss with us, possibly starting July 1st. So not too long from now. So we'll have to have that board discussion pretty soon to get into the budget. Maya and I had a really good meeting with the principal at Ivy Elementary today. It was just generally good to start building a relationship with the principal and just have, we're talking about how do we get more of IVCSD into the school, but we were really talking about the after school programs that we're trying to get established at the community center in partnership. It's going pretty good. There's not a lot on their end that we need to comply with. We're just finalizing how do we comply with state regulations on childcare, which is a little complex and might not fit the model we even want to use to do this. But we're trying. Our legal team's looking into how we can make this work. But we had a great meeting with Ivy Elementary, and a lot of things are squared away. We're just finishing up some of the regulation aspects. We also had a really good session with KTUA today about debriefing the presentation they made to the board, about talking about the improvements and deficiencies needed with the reports that were submitted and what the next steps of their work look like to actually producing recommendations and solutions to the problem. So we had a really good meeting. I can send more detailed email once I've been able to, it was just before the board meeting, but it was very productive. They heard us. I let them know, things that were shared with me and comments that were made. So I felt like we were heard on the changes that we wanted to see happen. Also good news is we did hear that we're close to getting a final decision from UCSB on the funding for the parking study. Our consultant is very eager to start. And so we should, I'm thinking we'll start in the next couple of months at this point, not too much later than that. I wasn't able to make it today, but I know Maya had a great meeting on the community garden and continuing to work on the designs and implementation of the new garden location that's right around the corner in front of the clinic. So hope to have more concrete proposals for you soon, but we're doing the stakeholder involvement of like the clinic, IVRPD, just all the neighbors right now. And thank you everybody for the retreat responses. The 25th works. The time might be better. I said 10 to 3, maybe better to say 10 to 4:30 and then end early instead of go later. So thank you, Director Topos, for mentioning that. But we could take more breaks or more strategic breaks and do that kind of length of time. But please let me know.
Carrie extended.
I just reminded Jonathan that we didn't finish the time
Oh,
last year.
True. Yeah, we did go that long last year. We just didn't have it on the books for that long. So it's like pretty much just doing the same as last year.
Putting to 5 on my calendar.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
If you guys have any content you want, themes or discussions, let me know. I'll work with Carrie and Marcos to design the agenda. But if anybody has anything you want at the retreat, our retreats have usually been looking backwards at what we've accomplished and what the current status quo is, and then talking about how we can take things further, how we want to change. That's been the main thing. But we have a new board now, so maybe you want to do some board bonding activities, how do we work together and different things like that. So we'll work that out.
No trust funds.
What's that? No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. But establishing new norms if you want to establish new norms, things like that. Yeah, we had a great meeting with Supervisor Caps on the board and GM level. And we also had all our staff meet with her, everyone who was available that day. And they gave an overview of everything we do on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, we just heard that our staff is awesome, as we all know, but we heard that more from our county supervisor, that she was really impressed by them. Marcos and I are going to be in training for board chair GM relationship for the next couple Mondays. We'll be doing Zoom trainings together for that from the CSDA. So yeah, and then I mentioned this in an email, but I'm taking March 7th as a personal day, and then March 14th, 15th, and 7th and 16th. I'm intermittently at interviews or at forums at SBCC, so I'll just like work outside of that or in the evening or other, on the weekend. So just letting you know about that week of March of the 13th will be really busy for me for my other duties.
All right, thank you for that report. Any directors have questions for our staff or for our GM? None, okay, I see no questions. Like to go to item 6 and announce that the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will take place on March 14th in 2023 at 6 p.m. on Zoom and at the community room 970 Embarcadero Del Mar, Isla Vista, California. Now I'd like to move to item 7, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Motion by Freeman, is there a second? Seconded by Scholes. Okay, any public comment on this matter? I hope not. Okay, none. Now I'd like to go to a vote. All in favor of adjourning?
Hi.
Aye. 0 no's. Okay, we're adjourned.
Good meeting, everyone.
Director Deschler. Director Deschler.
Sorry?
We're off, but you said we ran the.
No, 1 second.